Stepsister stole my fiancé and sent me postcards rubbing it in. Now they're broke and begging me for a job at the family business she was supposed to inherit. I, 28F, was engaged to my boyfriend from college about 4 years ago. We had been together throughout college and got engaged at the age of 23. We were engaged for a year, but a week before our wedding, he ran off with my stepsister. My ex-fiancé, Greg, 28M, and my stepsister, Melissa, 28F, eloped a week before we were supposed to get married and left nothing but a letter for me. In the letter, Greg mentioned that he had started an affair with Melissa a couple of months after we got engaged and realized that he couldn't marry me because that would be unfair to both of us and also to Melissa. They were the ones truly in love, and he said that he believed the universe had only used me to lead him to his true love. He couldn't marry me and cheat us both out of a happy future, so that was it. They ran away. I didn't see them again until recently. Greg's parents had covered the entire cost of the wedding, and I didn't have to pay anything because they were so embarrassed by what their son had done. But that was pretty much the last interaction I had with his family, as we had nothing more left to talk about. My family, however, was furious. My parents were livid, and my father actually considered hiring a private detective to track down where the two of them were and drag them back home for answers. Just to clarify, my father is my stepdad, but he has been my father since I was really little, and I have always addressed him as such because to me, he's my only father. I've never known my biological dad. He left our family shortly after I was born, and my mother never met him again. He had signed away his rights over me, and they were never married. She then married my father when I was 8 years old. Melissa and I used to go to the same school, and that's how our parents met each other. For some reason, though, Melissa decided that she didn't like me and began to treat me badly for the next few years. She was a bully in the truest sense of the word. She and her friends would constantly pick on me when we were at school. It didn't even stop when we got home. She would keep looking for opportunities to make me feel bad. I complained to my parents several times, and they tried to reprimand her, but it was never enough. She wasn't even scared of them, so she continued to bully me throughout my years in school. Those were a total nightmare because of her and her cronies. Just like my dad wasn't in the picture, Melissa's mom wasn't around either, but that was because her mother had passed away a few years after she was born. Her mother died in the middle of the night from an epileptic episode. So, anytime my mother tried to discipline her, she would tell her that she had no right to scold her because she wasn't her real mom. My father did try to get her to stop bullying me, but it didn't work. She just wasn't scared of anything. They tried everything from scolding her to talking to her nicely, but nothing got her to stop picking on me. Occasionally, they would even threaten to send her away, and she would dare them to do it because she knew they were all empty threats. This was just in middle school. Over time, Melissa only got worse. By the time we were in high school, she had picked up a bunch of bad habits and was pretty much a juvenile delinquent. She started smoking and would occasionally sneak out to go drinking with her friends, who were just as bad as her. It wasn't until she got arrested one night for breaking into someone's house while drunk that our parents decided to send her away and get her the help she obviously needed. After a few weeks of begging and protesting, my parents finally convinced her to go to a rehabilitation center for troubled teens. She wasn't happy about it, but my father was very firm and said that if she wanted to live with us and be a part of this family, she had to get better. He couldn't allow this behavior to continue, as she was becoming a menace to society. She left during our sophomore year and didn't return until after we graduated. She had enrolled in a school near the rehab center and was living with her aunt. I didn't see her for those couple of years, mostly because I wasn't interested in how my biggest bully was doing. My parents would visit her every weekend and ask if I wanted to come along, but the answer was always no. Her friends started ignoring me and pretending I didn't exist after she left, which made my high school experience much better. I didn't have anyone bullying me constantly anymore. Melissa continued her education in rehab, and when she came back, the first thing she did was apologize to me for everything she had put me through. She seemed calmer and more mature, so I actually thought she had changed for the better. I forgave her. We were about to go off to college in a few months, so it didn't matter anymore. Once we started college, I moved out, and so did she. We only came home for the holidays, and she was much nicer to me after that. By nicer, I mean she would just ignore me instead of picking on me like she used to. It was a welcome change. I'd rather be ignored than bullied. Our parents noticed this, but didn't try to force us to act like sisters because, given our history, it was more than enough that she was being civil. Then I started dating Greg, and after being together for a year, I decided to bring him home for Thanksgiving to introduce him to my parents. We all got along really well, And for the first time, I noticed that even Melissa was taking an interest in the conversation, which was a rare occurrence. Since she came back from rehab, she and Greg had actually gotten along, and after I started dating him, she began expressing more interest in being friends with me. She would often reach out to me just to talk, which she had never done before. I didn't understand what was going on, and I had a small suspicion that maybe she had a thing for Greg. So, one day, I decided to ask her if the real reason she was trying to be friends with me was because of Greg. I was paranoid. She laughed and said that wasn't the case. Greg had mentioned what a great relationship he had with his siblings at our first dinner together while talking about his family, and that's what made her rethink how she had been treating me. She told me that she had blamed me for being sent away for the longest time, but had come to realize that it wasn't my fault. She had brought it upon herself with her terrible behavior. She said it was time to stop punishing me and start trying to really become a part of the family. To do that, she would need to apologize from the bottom of her heart and actively work on our relationship. I was an emotional fool, and what she said to me that day touched me deeply. So, like an idiot, I decided to forgive her and try to be friends with her. We were on good terms for a long time after that. She was involved in the wedding preparations. I wouldn't say we were best friends, but we were getting along much better than before. We would meet at least once or twice a month to talk. By the time I got engaged, we were doing well, and I had introduced her to Greg in person before the engagement. Whenever we met at family events, they behaved pretty normally, so I had no reason to suspect anything. Even after the engagement, they continued acting like nothing was going on, and not for a second did I think that maybe Greg had feelings for Melissa. It never occurred to me, because Greg had put up a convincing act of being in love with me while cheating on me with Melissa. Even she was very convincing at pretending to be my friend. I didn't find out the truth until it was too late, and by then, they were already gone. My parents wanted to trace them and bring them back home, but I convinced them to leave it alone. I just wanted to forget everything. It was bad enough that the two of them had made a fool out of me and ran away a week before I was supposed to get married. I didn't want more drama. I was really depressed and didn't have the energy to deal with it. I spent the next couple of weeks working and sleeping, trying to avoid confronting my feelings. My heart was broken, but I was numb. The worst was yet to come. Of my life. Standing there were Melissa and Greg, looking far less happy than when they left. Their clothes were worn, and their faces were drawn. Melissa looked sheepish, which was a huge contrast to her arrogant attitude years ago. Greg was silent, just standing behind her, his eyes downcast. For a moment, I just stared at them in disbelief. Melissa cleared her throat awkwardly. We need help, she said, her voice much softer than I'd ever heard it before. Help, I repeated, still trying to process what was happening. After everything you two put me through? Greg stepped forward, looking like he wanted to speak, but he hesitated. Melissa continued, We made a mess of things, and we need a job. We thought you could help us out. She glanced at Greg, who nodded in agreement. I crossed my arms. You two really have the audacity to ask me for help after everything? My voice was cold, and it felt good to finally show them the anger I'd been holding in for so long. You ruined my life, sent me into a spiral, and now you think I'll help you? What happened to all that love and happiness you two had? Greg finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. It didn't last. Things fell apart fast. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with guilt. I was stupid. We were both stupid. I should have never done that to you. Melissa nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. We were wrong, and I know that saying sorry doesn't change anything, but we really messed up. I was selfish and hateful, and I hurt you, the one person who didn't deserve any of it. I stood there, staring at them for a long moment, the weight of everything crashing down on me again. They had shattered my world, and now they were standing there, asking for help like nothing had happened. Part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, but another part, the part that still remembered the sister I once thought I had, hesitated. Why now? I asked, my voice softer than I intended. Why come to me? What happened to all your plans? You had everything. You were supposed to inherit the family business. Melissa's face fell. It's all gone. My father cut me off. Everything. And now we're broke. We can't even afford to keep a roof over our heads. She paused, the guilt in her eyes heavier than I'd ever seen it. We need a job, we thought. Maybe since you're running the business now, you could give us a chance. I exhaled slowly, the anger and hurt still swirling inside me. I wasn't sure if it was pity or something else that was making me hesitate, but I knew one thing for sure. They had come back into my life at the worst possible time, and it felt like a test of whether I could forgive them, whether I could be the bigger person. But then I remembered all the postcards, all the pain they had caused, and how they'd flaunted their happiness in my face. I couldn't just forget that. You want a job? I asked, my voice hardening. You want me to help you after everything you've done? You think that's just going to fix things? Greg and Melissa exchanged a look, but neither of them spoke for a moment. Finally, Melissa took a deep breath. I understand if you can't. We just thought. She trailed off, the words stuck in her throat. I looked at them, feeling a knot form in my stomach. You took my trust and destroyed it. And now you want me to fix your lives? I don't know if I can do that. The silence hung in the air, thick and uncomfortable. Melissa and Greg stood there, the atmosphere solemn. Apparently, they weren't expecting my reaction. Greg looked at Melissa and then lowered his head, as if he didn't dare to speak anymore. That I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The conflict inside me was still there, but something had shifted. It was as if, in some small way, I had made peace with my past, and I didn't want to continue living in bitterness. I don't know if I can ever completely forgive you. I began, my voice quieter now but steady. But I can't just turn my back on you completely either. Maybe we start slow. Maybe we just take one step at a time. Greg's eyes softened with a mixture of relief and gratitude. He stepped forward slightly, almost as if he wanted to say more, but he paused. The silence between us felt heavy, yet strangely calming. Melissa, on the other hand, was already nodding, her face a mixture of hope and cautious optimism. I understand, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. We've hurt you, and we're so sorry for that. I nodded, trying to process everything they were saying. It had been years of estrangement, of feeling like I was abandoned by the very people I should have been able to count on. But here they were, not entirely apologetic, but at least acknowledging their wrongs, asking for a chance to make things right. That was all I could ask for at this point. You have to understand that trust takes time, I added, looking at both of them. I'm not promising anything right away, but I will try. For us, for this family. I don't want to keep living with the anger anymore. Greg gave a small, grateful nod. I get it. We're not asking for everything all at once. Just a chance to prove we can do better. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it felt like a start. Slowly, we began to talk more, the walls that had been built between us over the years slowly starting to crumble. There was still so much to be done, so many years to make up for, but at least for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were all trying to move forward together. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of awkward conversations and tentative attempts at rebuilding our relationships. We met for dinners, went through the motions of small talk, and tried to feel each other out. It wasn't easy. Trust, once shattered, never fully repaired without effort, and we were all feeling the weight of years spent apart. But there were moments where I saw a glimmer of the family we used to be, or at least the possibility of it. One evening, Greg called to ask if I would meet him for coffee. I hesitated but agreed. I was still unsure how far I was willing to go to repair things, but I owed it to myself and to him to at least hear what he had to say. We met at a quiet cafe near the park, one of those places where the noise of the city seemed to fade away. I sat down at a corner table, trying to steady my nerves. Greg arrived a few minutes later, looking older and wearier than I remembered. He sat down across from me, offering a small, awkward smile. Hey, he said, his voice softer than usual. Thanks for meeting me. Of course, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. What's up? He took a breath, clearly searching for the right words. I want to thank you again for giving us a chance to start over. I know it's not easy, and I know I don't deserve it, but I really do appreciate it. I shrugged, trying to remain composed. I said I'd try. That doesn't mean it'll be easy, for either of us. Greg nodded, his expression thoughtful. I know, and I'm not expecting it to be. But I also wanted to tell you that I've been seeing a therapist. I know I haven't always been the father I should have been, and I'm working on it. I want to be better, for myself, and for you. I blinked, taken aback. Greg had always been someone who kept things inside, rarely opening up about his feelings or struggles. To hear him say this, to acknowledge the pain he caused and take responsibility for it, felt like a breakthrough. You've never mentioned therapy before, I said, my voice softening. How long have you been going? About 3 months, he said, looking down at his hands. It's been hard, but I've realized that a lot of my issues come from how I handled things with you and your mom. I've been running from a lot, and I need to face it. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe he really was trying. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a false attempt to smooth things over, but a genuine effort to heal. Not just our relationship, but himself as well. That's a good step, I said quietly, feeling a lump form in my throat. I'm proud of you for doing that. There was a pause, and then Greg looked up, meeting my gaze with sincerity. I don't know what the future holds for us. I know it's going to take time, but I just want you to know I'm here, and I'll keep working at it. I don't want to lose you again. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and hope. The past couldn't be erased, but maybe it didn't have to define us forever. I'm not saying we're going to fix everything overnight, I said slowly, but we'll figure it out. One step at a time. Greg nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was progress. Real, tangible progress. Over the next few months, we took baby steps forward. Greg kept up with his therapy, and we began to rebuild our relationship with more understanding and patience. Melissa also started reaching out more, making an effort to reconnect. It wasn't always easy. There were days when I felt exhausted by the emotional labor of it all. But there were moments of joy too. One evening, after a family dinner at Melissa's house, I found myself sitting in the backyard with her. The air was cool, the evening sky filled with stars, and it felt like one of those rare, peaceful moments where everything seemed right in the world. I know this hasn't been easy for you, Melissa said, looking over at me with a soft expression. But I just wanted to say that I'm proud of you for everything you've done to make this work, even when you didn't have to. I smiled faintly, appreciating her words. Thanks. It's been hard, but I think it's worth it. I don't want to hold on to the anger anymore. Neither do I, she said. I know I haven't always been the best sister, but I'm trying. I want us to have a real relationship this time. I nodded, the weight of everything lifting just a little. Maybe, just maybe, we could finally be the family we were supposed to be. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be more challenges, more setbacks, and moments where it felt like we were taking 2 steps back for every one forward. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid of trying. And maybe that was enough for now.